one of the types of therapy that I know you have tried, that I have tried, that we are both passionate about. We are passionate about lots of different types of therapy, but one of the ones that we really have in common is EMDR. And so can you tell me a little bit about your journey with EMDR, both like as a client, but also as a clinician?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Are there specifics you want to know, or just?
I mean, I think specifically as a client, what was that experience like for you? And what are the changes that you noticed from it?
Yes.
Was it positive for you? Was it negative for you? Neutral? And I think, as a clinician, sometimes we try these types of therapy because we're like, oh, this is like the gold standard, or this is what this is, so we should go learn this, but we don't actually do it ourselves.
Yep.
Until in training we try it because we have to, and then we're like, oh my gosh, I should probably go find an EMDR therapist because clearly I have some shit to deal with, right? So yeah, if that gives you a bit more direction.
It does. And I don't know about you, Julie, so maybe you could share yours too, but full disclosure, also a little humiliating, I guess you could say, is because I'm glad you mentioned that point. I actually didn't start my own EMDR therapy until I was a consultant.
Okay, yeah.
So for those maybe listening, it was kind of like the basic journey, and then there's like 2 steps in between to become a consultant that Julie and I are. And yeah, I didn't start it till then. I was doing like my other therapy until then, like somatic work and all that stuff, but not formal EMDR therapy until 2 years ago.
Okay.
2 years ago. And the journey as a client was hard for a few reasons. Some may resonate, I don't know. But one is because of coming from the lens that we have, it was hard to remove that hat. It was hard to not judging, but like having that part mindful in that session when I'm trying to just be there as Kyle versus Kyle the psychologist.
Yeah.
And that was hard for a variety of reasons, which meant I actually had to try a few different therapists until I could find someone. And the therapist that I have, I kind of go as needed, but the EMDR journey is maybe a little different than how it's traditionally looked for people. And I say that because the work that we've done with EMDR has been on past life stuff.
Okay.
It's been really focused on intergenerational trauma, which might not be as uncommon as I'm thinking as it is, but how we train it, we don't really talk about that.
No, that doesn't come up in training at all.
No. And it was the wildest thing. So, normally you think about EMDR, it's the eye movements. I was laying on the couch, therapist was kind of at the end, and they tap on my feet going back and forth because I found that was most comfy for me.
Yeah.
And we were focusing on some stories from World War II with my grandfather as a teenager, because something about that held a sense of lack of safety. And it was weird because now when I think back to that experience and what I went through, it was kind of like a whole story that was playing out in my mind. And it was, I think it was Miley Cyrus that was talking recently about her experience with EMDR, and she's talking about how as she was doing it, it's like she was on a train, which is a common metaphor we use, going by in her life, and these stories were just zooming by. That's kind of what was happening, and I would be inserting things here or there to help Grandpa along his story while he was fighting back then and surviving.
Yeah.
And it almost got to a completion where he was able to get away from the war when the war ended, come over to Canada, and then be safe, and that's where it concluded in my work. And that really shifted that sense of, I guess you could call it safety, but it shifted something that I don't know how to put words to in my body, that just felt sharp initially, and then was gone afterwards. So my EMDR journey really has been focused up until this point on family and intergenerational stuff.
It's interesting. So my EMDR journey looks different, right? And I mean, everybody's EMDR journey looks so different.
Yeah.
But like I started EMDR, I got trained in EMDR more than 10 years ago. And I went and got trained in it. And the consultant at my training, actually, I'm still in touch with today. And he's actually one of the people I went to go see last year for EMDR. And so I did pieces of it throughout therapy with like a first therapist, probably 20 years ago. I think we did maybe 1 or 2 sessions, and life at the time it wasn't the right time for me to process trauma. I was still in the thick of it. My mom had died recently. My dad had just been diagnosed with terminal cancer. We were expecting him to die in a short period of time. Like it wasn't the right time for me to be doing this trauma work. And then I got connected to another therapist who I loved dearly. I saw him for probably 7 years. And I was so sad when he retired. I tried to convince him to keep me on as a client after he retired, and he was like, no, I'm retiring. I was like, oh, damn it. And so we did EMDR on like different memories here and there. Yeah. Kind of interwoven into therapy. But it wasn't the sole focus. We did lots of like attachment work and inner child work and, emotional regulation and storytelling and all those pieces. And, I went through a really, really traumatic period several years ago. That was like easily one of the most traumatizing experiences in my life. And I knew that I needed to do EMDR on it, but I just wasn't ready. And I knew it, and I knew I wasn't ready. But I talked to my consultant guy, and I told him, I was like, because he was kind of with me through all of that, so he knew exactly what was going on and where I was at. And I told him, I was like, when I'm ready, I want to come see you. And he was like, yep, you call me and you show up and we will do it. Because there was so much trust there, because there had been so many years of working together in some capacity. And I finally got to a space in my life where I was like, no, I'm ready. Like, I'm ready to do it. There was enough emotional stability. There was like stability in life. I felt like I wasn't battling the demons in my head anymore every day, right? And so I called him up and I was like, John, I'm coming. And he was like, okay, great. And so we did it in a different format. I actually flew to Colorado.
Very cool.
And it was also beautiful, like where we did it. And I stayed in Colorado and we did 5 days together. And we did an intensive style. So we did hours every day. And we did it around like his other client schedule, but also like what my capacity was each day. And so sometimes we did it for an hour because that's all I really had room for. And sometimes we did it for 5 hours. And it was so life-changing for me, actually. The reason why I went probably only took 3 hours to process out of the 5 days. Which I was not expecting. I was expecting the full 5 days to be this. It was like maybe 3 hours. But the rest of the 5 days was actually all like historical trauma, religious trauma. I have like quite an extensive amount of religious trauma, and like we spent 4.5, 5 days on religious trauma, family history, church stuff, purity culture, like all of that. And I was like sitting in this big chair, and I had like a blanket, and I had pulsers that pulse back and forth, they vibrate back and forth, because that's kind of my preferred way of the bilateral. And his wife would come down, because we did it at his home, and his wife would come down and she would bring us tea, and she made us fresh cookies, and we would sit and we'd have tea, and it was like, it was so like cozy and safe, right? And so comfortable. And because I knew John and John knew me, like there was no barriers there, right? And it was so powerful to have somebody sit with me and bear witness to the processing that happened, and to be able to go like, what happened was not okay, right? Because nobody had ever said that, right? Or at least not a white man, right? And so growing up the way I grew up, white men were the ultimate authority and position, whatever. And so having a white man be angry on my behalf and say like, that's not okay. It was like a total 180 in my life. I came home and it was like I internally felt like a different person.
Wow.
Right? And I know that that's not everybody's experience. And I think for me, that was my experience One, because I was really ready. I had done so much therapy work before.
Yeah.
Right? That like, this was just this last piece. I was holding it in my nervous system. I was holding it like in my core and my beliefs. I knew something different, but like here, it didn't believe it, right?
Mismatch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I felt it in my nervous system. And so being able to process it like mentally, emotionally, physiologically, it was like I came home and it was like I was a different person internally. It was wild. And it has stuck to this day, but I'm still integrating what I would say I learned and I processed, and one of the things I talk about with people is I think EMDR is really incredible for processing, but there's still a period of integration that happens afterwards.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. You had mentioned that to me at one point in time and that has stuck.
We don't talk about that. Because we process and we like, travel on this train, or we kind of watch these experiences and our belief systems change and our nervous system shifts, but we still have to walk out all those differences differently. And I mean, we don't talk enough about the integration, I think, where we have these changes in our system, but we still have to change the patterns of how we behave, how we operate, how we interact in relationships, how we communicate, right?
Yep.
And when we've lived one way for so long, that doesn't just flip overnight.
No.
Right? And so even now, I would say I'm still integrating the things that I processed.
Yeah.
And it's easier, but it's still hard work. And this is where the ongoing therapy process still is needed.
Yes. That makes sense, because like we're in therapy. I mean, in your case it was different because you did intensive, but like 1 hour of the week, but then you have 23 other hours and 24 other hours, 7 days a week that we need to integrate in whatever else we're doing.
Yeah, and I mean, I know, I talk with people often about pros and cons of, doing EMDR 1 hour a week in therapy versus doing, a half day intensive or full day or multi-day. And I mean, I think it all just depends on the person and where they're at and what their kind of system needs. Right? And just, it's intense. Yeah. It's really intense.
Yeah.
Right? And if you haven't done the prep work, it can actually be quite traumatizing.
Yeah, that's very true. Makes me think about what you're talking about with readiness and timing. Because you were saying you tried EMDR a while back, but the timing wasn't right.
Yeah.
How did you know it wasn't right? Like, what did you feel?
Things were changing so quickly at that point in time. My dad had just been diagnosed.
Right.
And we originally were given 6 months for him to live. Was rushed in for emergency brain surgery, and like all of a sudden was like chemo and radiation, and I was in school and I was working 3 jobs, and like there was just too much, right? And my mom died when I was a teenager, so like myself and my sister were full-time caregivers for my dad. And I mean, he was still very independent, but like we went back and forth to Sunnybrook 5 days a week. And so like there was no space for anything except for survival. And I think being in a survival space is not the space to process trauma. Right? And not that you have to be in a thriving space to process trauma, not by a long shot. But I think when we feel like we are barely able to breathe, like jumping into the things that are the deep, dark twisties, we already feel like we can't breathe. Right? Like, let alone, let's take a deep plunge. Like, that just doesn't make sense. Right? And I don't know if I knew that cognitively, but my system knew that I was like, no, just not ready.
That makes sense. Almost like you're already, because I had this visual, like you're treading water already, trying to get air, and then at that point in time, doing EMDR would be like having to go even deeper when you're barely hanging on.
Yeah, and we were going to do EMDR actually on my mom's death, right? And so like now with the imminence of my dad dying, right? And I mean, my dad didn't die for another 7 years, but the imminence of my dad dying and being like, okay, well, we're going to process your mom dying. Like, nope, like just not happening.
Your system was just like, no.
Yeah, it just, my system was not ready, right? And so for me, feeling ready felt like there was stability. I felt like I was like sleeping okay, and I was emotionally able to regulate, and I was able to take care of my body, and I was able to like recognize the story in my head versus the actual story, right? And
yes, key difference.
Huge difference, right? And I was in community and connected with people, and you know, there was no isolation, and so those pieces were all resiliency buffer factors for me to be ready to go and do that work.
Wow.
Yeah, it was life-changing.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it was life-changing.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm so glad that you had that experience too.
Oh, I would do it again in a heartbeat. Yeah, I don't need to because it's processed, but I would do it again in a heartbeat if I needed to. Yeah, totally worth it.
For future
things.
Totally worth it. Yeah.